edition of the Deep Dive Your Daily Intelligence Brief. It's Saturday, August 23rd, 2025. And yeah, let's be honest, most folks are probably thinking more about brunch or maybe some extra sleep today. But for the rest of us, here's the intelligence that still matters from yesterday, Friday, August 22nd. Our mission, as always, is to cut through all that noise, give you the really important nuggets from yesterday's global intelligence, and leave you genuinely well-informed. And yesterday, wow, it revealed a world really grappling with some serious issues: heightened food insecurity, shifting geopolitical alignments, volatile commodity markets. We've got some critical stories to unpack.
Indeed. And what you'll really see today is how interconnected these events are, from these really acute humanitarian crises right through to the subtle shifts in global power that, well, they impact all of us.
Okay, let's dive straight in then. Two really pressing items from yesterday. First up, a critical humanitarian crisis. Honestly, this is pretty unprecedented in recent history. We're talking about an official famine declaration in Gaza City. The Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, the IPC, they've officially declared that Gaza City and the surrounding areas have entered famine. I mean, this affects a staggering 514,000 people. It's the first famine classification outside Africa in, well, decades.
Decades, yeah.
And the UN humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher, he squarely blamed Israeli aid restrictions, called the famine preventable.
A very strong term.
Very strong. Now, Israel, for its part, dismissed the report, called it biased, but they have signaled they're ready to resume ceasefire talks. The situation is flagged with a high threat level, and the IPC actually projects conditions will get even worse by September.
What's really unsettling here isn't just the immediate terrible human tragedy, it's the political tightrope.
Right.
Israel agreeing to talks while at the same time reportedly planning a military assault on Gaza City. It's a huge contradiction.
Yeah.
How can any, meaningful negotiations actually progress under conditions that are so dire and frankly so conflicting? The human cost is obviously immense, but the core dilemma here for policymakers is how you navigate a humanitarian crisis that's just so deeply tangled up with ongoing military objectives. It's incredibly complex.
That deep political entanglement, it sort of echoes in our next story, doesn't it? Though this time it's from the financial world. Yeah. Yesterday, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, he hinted at a potential September rate cut. This was during his remarks to Jackson Hole.
The big symposium.
Right. And markets, well, naturally they interpreted these comments as dovish, sent global stocks surging. Europe's STOXX 600 hit a 5-month high.
Big jump.
But Powell also issued a clear caution. He warned the persistent tariffs and ongoing wage growth could very well keep inflation elevated. It feels like the Fed is walking its own kind of tightrope here, balancing market hopes against these stubborn economic realities.
It absolutely is. It really highlights the continued economic uncertainty we're all facing. Investors are clearly eager for easing for lower rates, but the Fed just can't ignore these external pressures, things like tariffs, a tight labor market pushing up wages. The real challenge for the Fed, I think, isn't just managing expectations. It's figuring out if these inflationary risks are, truly transitory, or if they represent something more fundamental.
Stickier.
Exactly. Something stickier that could easily derail any hoped-for rate cuts and force a really difficult choice between, well, supporting growth on one hand and taming inflation on the other.
Before we continue, just a quick note. This deep dive is powered by NextSight. They're a global investigations and intelligence leader. Their open-source OSINT platform, Site Connect, is what fuels these reports, and it lets you tailor them to your specific needs. From really complex cross-border investigations to high-stakes corporate intelligence, their work is consistently on another level, fast, precise, and always fully corroborated. You can learn more at www.next-site.com. Welcome back. Let's delve a bit deeper into that theme of tariffs and economic volatility. You might even feel this next story in your morning cup of coffee.
Coffee always gets attention.
Right. The U.S. implemented these 50% tariffs on Brazilian coffee imports effective August 6th. And already that's caused Arabica prices to jump above U.S. $3.74 per pound.
Wow.
That has immediate confirmed impacts on supply chains. It's forcing roasters to shift their buying to Central America and Colombia.
They have to adapt quickly.
Exactly. And in response, Brazil's State Development Bank, BNDES, they've unveiled a 10 billion real, that's about $1.9 billion US credit line to cushion the companies hit by these tariffs. It's a very clear move to try to maintain their export competitiveness, prevent layoffs. This is a high-confidence report, very direct impacts.
Yeah, and a key takeaway here is just how quickly these seemingly targeted economic measures can trigger this profound ripple effect right across global supply chains. And it directly impacts consumer costs. These tariffs, they're intended for geopolitical leverage or trade reasons, but they're not just headlines. They're immediate market disruptors. It really illustrates this broader trend where trade policy is, well, increasingly being weaponized. It challenges the stability of global markets, forces nations to actively reroute, adapt.
And it's not just coffee either. The EU is facing kind of similar pressures with its July 1st tariffs on Russian fertilizer. These levies have significantly raised costs for European farmers. We're hearing public complaints about unsustainable prices. Urea prices are already above $400 per ton. We're actually seeing farmers on social media, using hashtags like hashtag unfair levies, sharing photos of these skyrocketing price lists.
Right, real-world impact.
The initial goal was obviously to curb Russia's revenue,
Yeah.
but the unintended consequence is this direct risk to EU agriculture, potentially, higher food prices for European consumers down the line.
Yeah, this whole scenario raises a really critical strategic question for the EU, doesn't it? At what point does trying to exert geopolitical leverage against an adversary like Russia start to inflict maybe too much damage on your own domestic economy?
It's a tough balancing act.
It's a very delicate balance, and these decisions, they have really tangible impacts on the livelihoods of farmers, the cost of food for everyday citizens. It just highlights the complex trade-offs that are inherent in modern economic warfare, really.
As you listen, just remember that Nextsite's capabilities extend well beyond just reporting. They're OSINT specialists and investigative teams. They connect dots across borders, they validate sources, map relationships, and they turn fragmented signals into actionable strategy. Welcome back. Okay, so we've looked at some of the immediate economic shocks. Let's broaden our view now to the geopolitical chessboard, where nations are making some pretty significant power plays.
Yeah, this is where you really see the layered strategies coming into play. Take the U.S. and Venezuela, for instance. The deployment of 3 U.S. warships near Venezuela's coast that was immediately condemned by the ALBA-TCP bloc. That's the alliance of left-wing Latin American governments.
Right.
They called it illegal, destabilizing. Cuba's President Miguel Diaz-Canel even tweeted, accusing Washington of planning regime change. China and other regional allies quickly reaffirmed support for Venezuelan sovereignty.
And you saw pushback domestically in the U.S., too.
Absolutely. Progressive outlets, activists like Code Pink, they amplified warnings of a potential regime change war. You saw hashtag no war on Venezuela trending. And this follows earlier reports, remember, that the Trump administration had increased the bounty on President Maduro and had even considered invasion previously. So there's history here.
So it's definitely not just a show of force. It feels like a deeply strategic maneuver, maybe with multiple aims. And our intelligence report also flags a related, pretty significant economic move here. The Trump administration reportedly withheld operating approvals for European and Asian oil majors, companies like Repsol and Eni in Venezuela. But interestingly, they allowed Chevron to continue its operations. What's the deeper implication there?
Well, if you zoom out, this selective oil approval, it seems to reveal a pretty sophisticated strategy. It looks like it's about balancing global energy supply with targeted political pressure. By controlling which companies operate, the U.S. can potentially try to redirect Venezuela's oil revenues, or at least control them, and maintain significant leverage over the Maduro regime. Our report suggests this is partly driven by, domestic electoral politics and also a desire to control oil resources. It makes it a very high-stakes, multi-layered play for the region and certainly for global oil markets. High threat level flagged here.
That really underscores those hidden agendas, those strategic implications you mentioned. Okay, let's pivot now to Asia. We're seeing some really fascinating realignments happening there. There seems to be a nascent rapprochement between Bangladesh and Pakistan. A high-level Pakistani delegation visited Dhaka.
Interesting.
Yeah, it could signal a bit of a thaw in relations, potentially reduce India's influence in the region a bit. Although the demands for Pakistan to apologize for the 1971 war crimes, those still remain a sticking point.
Sure, that's a deep historical wound.
Definitely. But the discussions focused on more pragmatic areas, trade, visa relaxations, joint infrastructure projects.
What's fascinating about Bangladesh's move, I think, is how you see smaller nations strategically diversifying their alliances. trying to reduce dependence on maybe one single regional power.
Spreading the risk, perhaps.
Exactly. It's a clear signal of a shifting landscape. And concurrently, you have South Korea unveiling this ambitious three-stage denuclearization plan for North Korea.
Right, I saw that. Freeze, dismantle, then integrate.
That's the plan. Freeze, dismantle, then integrate Pyongyang into regional economic frameworks. President Lee Jae-myung also expressed willingness to honor wartime agreements with Japan, signaling this broader Korean New Deal concept for regional stability and economic integration. But, of course, it's all contingent on verified compliance from North Korea. That's the big if.
Always the big if with North Korea. And then further afield, down in Oceania, New Zealand officials expressed some unease. Chinese warships, including a Renhai-class destroyer, transited the Tasman Sea.
A very capable ship.
Apparently so. And it's the first time such advanced vessels have sailed so close to New Zealand. Beijing offered no explanation.
Silence can be telling.
Indeed. Reports from New Zealand indicate some public concern, with suggestions the government should, quote, tell Beijing to stay out of our backyard.
Yeah, and this Chinese naval posturing, it's probably not just a one-off event. It correlates pretty directly with New Zealand's recent decisions, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, their decision to modernize their naval aviation, buying those MH-60R Seahawk helicopters, the Airbus A321XLR aircraft, and also fast-tracking port expansions.
Connecting the dots.
It reflects a clear, deliberate alignment with Western partners amidst these rising regional tensions. The core question for nations like New Zealand becomes, how do you effectively balance those crucial economic ties with China against growing security concerns and the imperative to protect your own territorial interests?
It's a delicate and, like you said, increasingly complex geopolitical tightrope for them.
Absolutely.
Speaking of domestic shifts, let's bring it a bit closer to home, look at some key developments and maybe some unique intelligence nuggets. In North America, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney announced they would remove many retaliatory tariffs against the U.S.
A goodwill gesture.
Seems like it. Trying to restart trade talks. However, the levies on autos, steel, and aluminum, those will remain, apparently to match existing U.S. commitments.
So, a pragmatic move. Trying to reset what's been a pretty frosty trade relationship, maybe prevent an election-year trade war. It illustrates that attempt to use diplomacy to reduce economic friction, but still strategically protecting key domestic industries. It's textbook balancing of complex economic and political factors.
Right. And in the tech world, Elon Musk's X Corp, formerly Twitter, agreed to pay roughly $500 million to settle claims from former employees.
The ones laid off in late 2022.
That's right. The settlement follows allegations of withheld severance, overtime pay. It's a significant amount. Could potentially influence broader tech sector labor standards, maybe?
Could set a precedent.
Possibly. Meanwhile, Mexico's economy grew 0.6% in Q2. That was slightly below forecasts. Manufacturing and services were up, but agriculture contracted, mainly due to drought. It highlights that vulnerability of some sectors to, environmental challenge.
Climate impacts showing up in the GDP numbers.
Exactly. Shifting now to Africa, we see nations grappling with both development challenges and issues of justice. South Africa, for instance, took a major step to address its, chronic logistics bottlenecks.
Transnet issues, yeah.
They've authorized private companies now to run trains on Transnet's freight network. The aim is to add 20 million tons of capacity annually by 2029.
That's huge.
It's a crucial move to combat those inefficiencies that have really hobbled their exports, potentially unlocking billions in revenue if it works.
That's a clear example of a nation really actively trying to shape its economic future through strategic reform. And at the same time, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, you saw this dramatic pursuit of accountability. The military auditor general sought the death penalty in absentia for former President Joseph Kabila.
On war crimes charges.
Yes, including homicide, rape, and torture. Kabila, who's currently abroad, claims he plans to return. Congolese activists on social media expressed both support for justice, but also skepticism. Some feared it might be a political witch hunt. It really underscores a nation grappling with its past.
A very difficult process. And from Niger, the defense ministry reported killing a Boko Haram commander, Bakura Oromo, though authorities did caution that these claims weren't independently verified yet.
Need confirmation on that one.
Right. Then, a really fascinating cultural note from Africa. There's a campaign to replace the standard Eurocentric Mercator map projection.
The one that distorts sizes.
Exactly. Replace it with a projection that accurately depicts Africa's true, immense size. It gained African Union support. Advocates point out things like, 14 Greenlands could fit into Africa. The aim is to dismantle colonial mindsets, encourage more realistic investment by highlighting Africa's actual scale and potential.
That's powerful. These stories really do reflect nations actively shaping their futures and identities, from pursuing justice for victims and driving economic reform, right through to this symbolic but important fight for accurate representation on the global stage.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Now, for some stories that highlight environmental concerns and maybe even a touch of human ingenuity in the face of adversity. In the Philippines, fishermen in the Cagayan River reported drastic declines in their shrimp catches. This is after sand dredging began.
Okay.
They suspect illegal black sand mining is happening, disguised as flood control measures.
All right.
Allegedly by Chinese-backed companies, their income has plummeted from around 1,000 a night down to just 300 or 400.
Devastating for their livelihoods.
Absolutely. Fishermen even posted videos of their empty nets online, pleading, saying things like, "We used to catch 60 cans of shrimp, now only 5." This is flagged as a high-confidence report based on multiple local sources and first-hand accounts.
This story just powerfully illustrates that conflict between, short-term economic or maybe political pressures and the long-term environmental and social well-being. It raises that important question. What happens when alleged corporate interests directly threaten the livelihoods of entire communities and fundamentally alter the natural environment?
Yeah.
And the contrast, as you said, between that potentially devastating impact in the Philippines and, say, the civic celebration we saw around education funding in Argentina, it's quite stark.
Speaking of environmental events, a 7.5 magnitude earthquake struck the remote Drake Passage. That's between Argentina and Antarctica.
Wow, big one.
Big one, but very remote. No tsunami or major damage reported because of its location. Still, a powerful reminder of our planet's dynamic forces.
Always humbling.
Definitely. And in Libya, a rocket struck near the UN's mission compound in Janzur. Thankfully, no casualties. But it really underscores the extremely fragile security situation there, even amid ongoing talks to try and reunify the rival governments.
Still very volatile.
Very. Libyans near Janzur actually posted photos of the rocket plume, urging the UN to relocate until security improves. And back in Argentina, the Senate delivered a pretty significant blow to President Javier Milei.
The university funding fight.
Exactly. They overturned his emergency decrees and instead approved increased funding for public universities. Milei vowed to veto the bills, accused legislators of hijacking the system. But students celebrated passionately in the streets, chanting, "Education is not for sale." It's a confirmed high-confidence report showing these deep domestic political divides playing out very publicly.
Yeah, these stories really underscore the diverse challenges and sometimes triumphs across the globe. From immediate threats to livelihoods and fragile security situations to these powerful moments of communal celebration and, well, democratic assertiveness against proposed austerity.
Absolutely. Which brings us neatly to our correlational analysis and some recommended actions for you, our informed listener.
Okay, so if we connect these different threads, several key patterns really emerge. Global equity markets, like Europe's STOXX 600, they rallied significantly on Jerome Powell's, let's say, dovish tone.
Right, the hint of cuts.
Exactly. It indicates that market sentiment is still heavily swayed by central bank signals, often overriding regional economic data, even Germany's recent GDP contraction. It just highlights the powerful influence of monetary policy hopes on investor behavior right now. Meanwhile, gold miners, like South Africa's gold fields, reported record dividends. Why? Because gold prices climbed on geopolitical uncertainty, tariff risks, reinforcing gold's enduring role as that safe haven asset in volatile time.
Makes sense.
The tariff stories, coffee from Brazil, fertilizer from Russia, they clearly demonstrate how protectionist measures can rapidly lead to price surges, supply chain disruptions, and potentially even social unrest. And oil prices also ticked higher, didn't they? Due to the U.S. deployments near Venezuela, the restrictions on oil companies there, all adding to global supply uncertainty.
And those hidden agendas you mentioned earlier.
Right. In terms of strategic, often hidden agendas, Germany's reluctance to recognize a Palestinian state right now. It appears possibly an attempt to maintain diplomatic leverage over Israel while also avoiding domestic political backlash. Similarly, the EU's fertilizer levies on Russia. While framed as sanctions, they could also serve as a kind of protectionist measure favoring their own domestic chemical producers.
An interesting angle.
And New Zealand's strategic choice of U.S. helicopters, fast-tracking port laws that directly indicates a clear alignment with Western partners. It's happening amidst rising Chinese naval activity in the Pacific. It looks like a direct response to a perceived regional threat.
So pulling it all together, what does this mean for you, the listener? What can you take away from this deep dive?
Well, our report suggests several key actions for those looking to stay sharp, stay strategically positioned in this pretty volatile world. Priority Action 1. Prepare contingency plans for humanitarian aid into Gaza. The severe famine conditions demand immediate logistical planning. Anticipate rapid deployment possibilities once broader access might be granted. This is really about being proactive in the face of immense human need.
Getting ready for when the window opens.
Precisely. Priority Action 2. Develop robust commodity hedging strategies, particularly for coffee, fertilizer, and gold right now. Tariff-driven volatility is clearly destabilizing supply chains and budgets. Strategic hedging can protect margins for businesses or protect investments.
Okay, those are the top priorities.
Yeah.
What else?
Tier 2 action. Monitor U.S.-Venezuela tensions very closely and adjust any exposure you might have. Those warship deployments, the sanctions they create, significant geopolitical risk for investors and exporters in Latin America. Keep a close eye. Also Tier 2. Engage proactively with Asian partners on environmental safeguards. That alleged black sand mining in the Philippines, it just underscores the critical need for corporate social responsibility, for reputational protection for any business operating in the region. Due diligence is key.
Good point.
And Tier 3 action. Explore infrastructure investment opportunities down in Oceania. Those fast-track port expansions, the defense modernization in New Zealand, they signal clear opportunities for logistics and aerospace firms that are aligning with Western strategic interests in the Pacific.
Okay, some very concrete takeaways there. That concludes the Friday, August 22nd, 2025 Intelligence Brief, brought to you on this Saturday, August 23rd edition of the Deep Dive. We've seen again just how interconnected our world is, haven't we? From global trade disputes hitting your daily coffee price, to devastating humanitarian crises, to these complex geopolitical chess matches playing out in places like the South Pacific. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and Spotify. Share your thoughts, like, comment, spread the word if you find this valuable. Stay informed, stay sharp, and may your Saturday be as balanced as, hopefully, your portfolio.
And as you reflect on these complex narratives today, maybe consider this provocative thought. In a world where national interests often seem to clash, are the very tools designed to achieve those interests, things like tariffs or military posturing, are they actually contributing more to global instability than they resolve? Are they creating unintended consequences that ripple much further than anyone initially planned?